Hey, hello everybody. Hey, I'm David at Azure, and we we did this last week, and today quite a few folks have requested that I revisit the story of Azure. How did it get here? How do we do this kind of unusual thing that we do? And so, hey, I guess if I start at the beginning, so I'm a farmer. Started as a farmer, multi-generation farmer. In fact, I think if I look at my as far as I know, in my direct lineage, at least from my father's side, there was never anybody who wasn't a farmer. It's been, so my roots run pretty deep in on the farm side. But it was a little bit different, when I was, so, so in many ways we were, my family was typical farmers. We had, they had gone to the chemical cycle like everybody else back in the 50s and 60s. And, but there was a couple of things from a health perspective in my family, and one was when I was a very young child, I was born with what they thought was a autoimmune disease of some sort. And anyway, I could not. I was very, very ill. In fact, my earliest memories are laying on the couch, wheezing and wondering if I could get my next breath. And so, and the doctor said, I wasn't long for this world, and my parents didn't want to believe that. So, and my mom, she had dabbled just a trace in healthy food and eating before, and so she started doing research like crazy. And about the same time, my grandfather, he had serious heart problems, and he was taking nitroglycerin just to walk to the mailbox. Couldn't really work anymore. I mean, he wasn't that old. He was just in like early 70s, but he was very, had terrible, terrible heart problems. And so my mom started researching very heavily and found that anyway, she found an answer for what mine was, which was primarily I just had an extremely severe dairy allergy, and I was also extremely sensitive to sugar. So to this day, I really can't eat dairy. I was born with a microbiome that doesn't support that, and I have to be extremely careful with sugar intake. I really can't eat refined sugar of any sort. Just I can have fruit and things like that, but not no refined sugar. So so then she figured out, started this experiment with Granddad. He changed his diet and started eating garlic, and his heart problems completely went away. Got completely well. In fact, he was actually killed in a farm accident um, about 10 years later, and he was working 16 hours a day up to the day he died. So, before he couldn't even step on a tractor. So he completely got well, and I got well, and so my parents realized there was something to it. There was something real about chemical sensitivities, about eating healthy food, and so a few years later, my dad started researching it more, and he realized, hey, the chemicals that he's using on the farm are one of the biggest contributors to autoimmune type diseases. And so this is back in the 70s. So he switched to organic farming in 1973. It was way before it was cool. It was way before it was a thing. Um, but he did it because he believed in it, and because he believed that the chemicals that were being used to control weeds and to fertilize and those things were damaging the food supply. He says, I cannot sell food with good conscience that I know is going to cause health issues to the people who eat it. So that was the beginning of our organic farming. So I basically grew up in organic farming. So as far as skipping forward, nearly 20 years here. Dad, in the meantime, he had gotten a contract with Bob's Red Mill, which is what is now known as Bob's Red Mill, to raise grain, wheat and rye for them at the time. And in the late 80s, in the meantime, Fred Meyer had sold to Kroger's and they no longer wanted organic. And so after we planted the crop, we lost the market. It went away. We had no place to sell the organic grain anymore. So I was young and stupid and overly ambitious at the time. I was, early, almost 20, I guess. And so I went out and said, hey, somebody's buying this product, from Fred Meyer's or whoever. Somebody wanted organic. Otherwise, why would we were sending a lot of grain over there. Somebody wants it. So we got to find who wants it. So I went out and I started hitting all the small stores and the co-ops and stuff like that and saying, hey, we have wheat, and I got some custom ground. So we have flour. Can you buy wheat and flour from us? And so I kind of got these answers here. I've got thousands of bushels of grain, and they're saying, well, we could probably take 4 or 5 bags a week, 4 or 5 bags a week. How am I going to make that work? But instead of saying no, I just said, I kind of put together this idea in my head. Okay, well, what if I just deliver to them? So I went back to all of them and talked to them. Hey, is every other week okay? So I started making this little route. I drove up to, Tri-Cities and Yakima and Ellensburg, Seattle, and back one week. And the next week I drove Portland, Eugene, Bend, and back the following week. So I do it. It'd usually take me a day or sometimes a day and a half to do this run, and I would just deliver the grain and stuff in the pickup. So 2 things happened relatively close together. So we're talking, late 80s here, one thing is that some of the stores started asking me for other things. Hey, you got wheat and stuff, but hey, do you have lentils? Do you have beans? Do you have these things? Can you get me that? Because I was delivering, doing a good job, giving them good quality. And so they started asking for more things. And the other thing that happened is we had quite a few friends and family up in, out in eastern Washington, and I was driving through there. So they started asking me, hey, can you stop in Portland and pick me up some nuts or some, spices or whatever, because it was kind of a food desert out there, particularly at that time. And so I started doing that. I would stop and, pick up at various places in Portland, and so I started, because I got a little more, I started going to wholesale houses instead of just retail stores, and would pick that up and take it over there. And then suddenly I got this bright idea that, there's so many people that want this to happen. If I'm doing these runs, what if I made a little catalog and made a list of the things that people most of the time do it, mark it up just a little bit, so because I was doing it for free before, and just mark it up just a little bit so that it at least pays gas, and then then I won't have to handle every single transaction individually. So that was actually about 35 years ago, about right now. And so come Christmas, I took a week off for Christmas break because some of the stores didn't care if they got delivery that week. So I took a week off and sat down at an old typewriter, word processor typewriter, and I made the first Azure catalog. My wife and I did that during that Christmas break. I was relatively newly married at that point in time, and so Kimberly and I, we sat down and made the first catalog. It was 3 pages, I believe, folded in half, and we put a little cover on it, and these were the things that people had asked me for over time. And believe it or not, the word got around fairly quickly that we had that catalog out there, and we started getting more and more requests for it. So that is how Azure was born. Kind of by accident, really didn't intend to go out and start a food distribution company. I was just trying to sell grain and trying to help out friends and family. And in many ways, that's still a big chunk of the Azure mission. I just really want to help out folks to get healthy food in places that are hard to get it and anywhere, because I think with the experience that we have, we can give better quality and higher quality foods for a very, for a price that a family can afford. And I believe everyone should have the opportunity to eat good food and not just have to settle for second best because you have a large family or you are on a limited budget. And so what we do here at Azure, that is still a big part of our goal. So we kind of went on, grew quite a bit. Started delivering farther down the coast, started going over to Boise, up to, we were already going to Seattle, but I went up a little north of Seattle, down the I-5 corridor, down to Grants Pass, started going a few other places because these catalogs kept getting requested and people kept asking me. Again, this was before internet, so, it was paper catalogs and they were calling us on the phone. I set up a little office and actually in my parents' house at first. I remodeled a little building, an outbuilding that we had here on the farm to do the product in. And then about 98, we had people starting to do this stock up thing for Y2K. So there was a big push for Y2K, and to lay some food aside because there was the thoughts that a lot of the computer systems would be not ready to handle the next millennium because of the way they were programmed, and which didn't turn out to be substantial. However, a lot of people stocked up on some food, and that actually really is what grew Azure up in many ways. Before that, it was more, friends of family, just word of mouth, just people telling other people. I mean, we had grown a lot, but all of a sudden it just went because we had bulk food at a great price. And so my uncle, he was a truck driver, he was an owner operator, and so he became the first Azure semi driver. Before that, I was just delivering my pickup originally, and then I had a van, like a cargo van, and then I had a little box truck that we were delivering in, and we used that box truck still during that whole time. But on some of the bigger areas, Uncle Norm, he started using his semi truck to do deliveries in, and he would do backhauls as well. So he would pick product up after he delivered on the way back. And then it wasn't too long after that my brother, his father-in-law, was a farmer out in North Dakota, and he wanted to sell Azure some of his grain. So he started bringing it out and visited his daughter at the same time. And so we came up with this bright idea of sending Azure products out on his truck for his backhaul. And that just really took off in North Dakota. Well, all the way back from Montana into North Dakota where his place was. And so pretty soon he had more going that way than he was bringing this way. So that was the first time we actually expanded out of the local one-day drive area, basically here from Azure, and that really grew it up. But then, of course, when Y2K didn't end up being too disastrous at the of January of 2020, now I don't have way less business. So I did the first marketing that I ever did, and I really didn't even know what I was doing. But I sent out a direct mail piece with the scheduled deliveries with some material in there telling everybody about, hey, that Azure doesn't just carry grains. We also carry yogurts and fruits and vegetables and other things that, a family would want. And that was quite successful. All of a sudden, and actually by the end of 2020, dollar wise, we were back up to where we were um, at the end of '99. So we started, it started catching, and then not too long after that, we opened up California, and uh, because we initially opened California more because there was a lot of product coming out of California, raisins and rice and almonds and things like that, that our customers wanted, and it was a lot easier to pick it up direct from the source. Again, we were always wanting to go directly to the farmer as much as possible, and we still do. We obviously still do to this day. Um, so that, in a nutshell, is how Azure was born, and then we began to grow. I mean, we basically remodeled the farm shop building to be our warehouse. This is during the '99 rush. I mean, we didn't have much time. We were just scrambling. We had another building we could use for a farm shop. We just revamped it, put product in there, put an upstairs in part of it. It was, really, really quick, and we put it together just to make do. And then pretty soon we started outgrowing that, in the next 5 or 6 years. And so we started, we had product in semi trailers out in the field, and we had to pull them in to pull stuff off and back in. So we came up with this idea that we would build a new warehouse, a bigger one here on the farm. But we ran into some issues. The county decided that it was exclusive farm use, and they weren't going to let us build here. They were not going to issue a permit to build. So we ended up moving. We had some property in one county over to the east in Morrow, and so we moved. We ended up building the warehouse on that property because that county was open to the idea of putting a warehouse there. And in fact, and it was also within the urban growth boundary of the city of Morrow, so it made the permitting and everything a lot easier. So that's how we ended up with the warehouse over in Morrow. And so we built in about, I believe it was 2007. And so we've been in that warehouse, and we built it so big we thought, this would last us indefinitely, and it has lasted a long time. We're still in that warehouse today, but it is definitely bursting at the seams, and we're going to have to do something else soon. And we've actually even requisitioned some of the old warehouse space. We have products stored everywhere again, including we're starting to go to the semi trailers again, even with the new warehouse. So it won't be too long until we have that. Then the next major challenge here at Azure was the software. So back in 16, we didn't even we were late to the game with software, with our website. We didn't even get our website up until, years after everybody else did, truthfully. A little bit late to the technology game. But we realized, hey, this was the way it was going. We would have to, are we an e-commerce company? Oh no, we were here long before e-commerce. We just have had a website and used e-commerce technology to be able to, make it more convenient for customers to place orders. So you don't have to call us up, give them to us on the phone. So anyway, we were a little bit late to the game, and so we had to basically start building our software. So I looked and looked and looked. I spent weeks and months looking at every kind of software you can imagine, trying to see if we could make it work. I even tried one. I bought one software suite, and it just actually was horrible. did not work well. I mean, it made us do about 80 steps to do one little thing. It was horrible. So so we ended up, we had this little homemade system that a friend had built that we were using. It was a single user. I mean, our customer service, we had like, I think 6 or 8 people in the office at the time, and if one person was in a customer in any customer's account, they everybody else was locked out, and it was, they had these little bells, and they would ring the bell and say, "Hey, uh, I need to get into a customer account or an invoice," and everybody else would get out so so the next person that had the live phone call could get in. So it was kind of but we ended up using that for a long time because we didn't have anything. So we had a friend that built us that software, but it was very, very basic. We were still doing most things by hand. So at this point, we ended up having to rebuild the software completely from scratch because I could not find anything. And so, and at the same time was when the FDA put in all the new what's called FSMA, their food safety rules. And it wasn't that, and I don't think they really help much for actual food safety, but they require a tremendous amount more record keeping. We have to be able to track product. We have to track product in every which way, all the way to the customer and all the way back to the source. And so if there's a recall, we need to be able to, which we've had very few, but we have to be able to demonstrate to the FDA that we can do that. So that required substantial software improvements. So I ended up contracting with a company to build the software. And they told me at the time, so this was about 15-ish, told me at the time that they quoted me about $1 million and it would take about a year to do. And so we had, we budgeted that out, figured that we could do this. This is okay. We'll get this done. We'll make that work. And the problem is that in a year's time, we had spent $1 million, but we didn't have any software. And so they kept telling us, "Oh, well, it's, we're right there. We just need to hire a few more people." And so they wanted a little more money to keep coming in because it was a time and materials thing, but their estimate was $1 million in 1 year. And little more. So I kept, okay, it's almost there. We'll get it, I'm sure. So that went on for like 6 months. Now we had spent almost double and still didn't have any software. And I didn't have the money set aside. I didn't have the money budgeted. And the other part is, because of the way I had run Azure, I had never incurred any debt. I'd always paid for everything with cash. And so at that point now I'm eating into our operating capital to be able to manage to get this software done, and I still don't have software. And to make a long story short, I mean, it was really miraculous events that allowed us to get the software done, but it put Azure in a really bad space for a few years. Really, from 15 was pretty good because that was the year we were building the software and the money was budgeted. But starting in 16, about mid-year, we started really seriously running out of capital. And I spent most of that year trying to borrow money, and I could not get a bank to loan me any money because I had no credit. Never borrowed money before, and we had showed expenses that were higher than our income for the last year. They didn't want to look at the 20 years before that, only for the last year. And yeah, we'd lost money that year because we were paying all this money out for software. that was in excess of what we had, we had set aside and budgeted. So, so we ended up going through a very difficult time financially, and that's when I had a customer tell me, customers for the most part were extremely supportive. We did lose some business, but not a lot. It was, but yet our out of stocks were horrible because we couldn't afford to buy larger quantities. We couldn't give as good a pricing. It was bad, but one of my customers suggested that, he said, what if I bought some inventory for you and you just sold it for me? And so I just kind of like, oh, a light bulb went in. Hey, maybe this is something we could do. Because, because we're not a publicly traded company, we cannot borrow money from non-accredited investors. I can't like borrow money from an individual legally to invest in the company, because you have to become qualified to be publicly traded to do that. So I came up with this plan. Okay, what if many customers would be interested in investing in inventory? And that is exactly what happened. We launched the CSI program, the Customer Sponsored Inventory Program, and so this was like in 2018, and it was a lot of folks came through on that. It was great. We were able to get inventory back in. Throughout the year of 2019, I mean, we were still kind of sitting on the edge because we still had a lot of, shall we say, old debt that we were servicing at the same time as trying to, use the CSI money to increase the inventory. But at least we had product to sell, and we were, turning a profit again. So that was it was just a godsend, really. It was a miracle. It was a great idea, and it was just wonderful customers that came through to make that happen for Azure. And so that's one of my, there's many, but that's one of my miracle stories, because if that hadn't happened, Azure couldn't have survived, and I know that to be the case. So I'm really dependent. I'm completely, Azure's survival was completely due to the customers coming through and just owning inventory. So it was a great amount of faith and trust on their part, and and it worked out really well. And then, of course, the past 2 years, sales have gone up tremendously, I think, after the COVID thing, and so those memories of barely getting by are now in the past. It's more about growth and trying to keep up with the growth, with getting all the orders out the door, getting the trucks and drivers in place. Our logistics has become much more complex, but thankfully we have a really good team for that, and and a really good team all said here at Azure that's made that happen. And then even this fall, when we asked for volunteers to come work, we have about 20 people that answered that call and came to help, and it made all the difference. Even this. So Azure really, if you get down to the core, my story is really about being having a great relationship with our customers and vendors, and that's what it's about, because our customers have stepped in and helped us every time that we had major challenges. That's where we went. That's where we've had to go. And so I want to throw out a great shout out to all of you who did help, but thank you. And even being a customer and purchasing from Azure has been a great help, because that's what actually makes it happen from day to day. That's what gives us the volume to be able to make great buys and get good quality products at affordable prices, which is what Azure is really all about. So, hey, there's the there's the Azure story. There in a little bit. So there's a couple. Let's see. I guess there's a couple more questions that have come in. What is Azure's vision for the future? And as far as the future goes, we never know the future. That's a hard question to answer. But Azure is here to answer the call. We do not plan to go anywhere. I do not plan to sell out to Amazon or some other big corporation like everybody else in this industry has done. I have sons that are very interested in fact, two of my sons are very integrally working here at Azure with me. If something were to happen to me, I am quite certain that Zach would be able to take over relatively quickly, especially with the team that we have right now. And so I see nothing but good for the future. I see a bright future. I see that we can continue to grow. We can continue to grow substantially, and at some point, Azure may actually become a major contender in the natural foods space. Not that we aren't. We are fairly major in our segment, but still, when we're talking about the food supply of the whole company, we're a pretty small portion of it, really. But it's been, I think Azure has a great future, and especially, as we've increased our manufacturing capability, we're making a lot of our own product. We have our own flour mill. We make the carobs. We do the spices and spice blends. Besides the farm, which has never stopped. I'm still a farmer. Our family is a farm family and will be. And we grow different things than we used to. I mean, it used to be all just grain. We don't grow that much of that anymore. But we grow, fruits and vegetables, and still grow grain. We grew a lot of einkorn this year, which is a really fun crop. I, want to, and it's a really great product. But anyway, don't want to pitch products here today. But that's a fun one. And but it's been as we can integrate into those items more and actually control the quality from the very, not just choose good quality products, but actually control the product, because there are products. They're the Azure brand. If we make the carob from scratch, if we make a bad product, we know that. It's on us. And so our quality is our own. And I feel like we can really give better products all the time when we're in control of that process. So that's one of the big goals for the future, is to control more of the products. So hopefully, if everything works as planned, you will see more Azure brands start to pop up with different kinds of products that we can actually control the process on. So that's part of my vision for the future. And the other is to just be a blessing to as many families as we possibly can. And that's kind of the bottom line. So,
yeah,
there any other questions that popped up?
Not seeing any other questions, so if you just want to.
So thank you, everybody. I know maybe that was a little bit of a long-winded explanation, but it's been 35 years right now since I was that young kid that went out in my pickup truck to try to sell the product. So it's been a long journey. I've certainly had to learn a lot of new things. We've definitely had to grow a really amazing team here at Azure, and there's been a lot of great relationships in the process. And I want to thank you for your part in making that a reality.